live to everyone watching. Hey, good morning, everybody. We have here with us now on stage Rodney Sampson, who is the CEO of OHUB. Rodney, say hi to the people.
Hey, everybody. Hope all is well. Hope you've had an amazing BitCon 2021.
Yeah, all right. And we're going to be talking about solving tech's diversity. Rodney Sampson, who is the CEO of OHUB. Rodney, say hi to the people.
Hey, everybody. Hope all is well. Hope you.
All right. So I was going to say, Rodney, there may be, if you have another window open.
Yeah, I just figured out that.
No problem. Yeah. So what we're going to do is just, we're going to tackle this little problem. Me and Rodney, and if we can, we'll get Preston to join us on stage here from DivInc shortly. But in the meantime, Rodney, just tell the folks a little bit about who you are and what OHUB is.
Absolutely. Once again, congratulations, Dennis, on a successful conference, man. You pulled out all the stops this go around. So I want to say kudos to you and your team, watching you all work over the years. Especially salute out to my guy, man, from high school, Michael Jenkins, who's really a part of you all work. We went to the same high school, Frederick Douglass, here in Atlanta back in the day. So. That being said, I started my career in tech over 21 years ago. And my path was as a technology founder of a high growth startup. And just to give you context, in those days, there were really only 3 of us who had raised venture capital over $1 million. That was myself here in Atlanta. Omar Wasso, if you remember Black Planet.
Oh yeah. He's over at Preston now.
At Preston, yeah. And Clarence Wooten was in Baltimore. Clarence had raised more than all of us. And all 3 of us had exits. And that particular exit was redefining for my life, family, and career. And I did a rinse repeat. About 3 more times. 2 startups failed miserably, and 2 were successes. And so what I started to pay attention to was that the Black tech startup and venture folks were outliers. We could all basically fly on one plane somewhere. And I said, you know what? I didn't want to do the typical philanthropy thing. I didn't want to just do the VC thing at the time. I wanted to build a platform that would normalize seeing Black people in all aspects of tech. More Black technologists, more Black, sales, finance, marketing, folks at companies who actually manage P&Ls. We're in the C-suite, the boards, but also writing checks as investors, building high growth companies, creating jobs. I wanted to normalize that. And so my wife and I started Opportunity Hub 8 years ago. And this was right after my 4th book, Kingonomics, had been released. And so we've been around 8 years, really building what I would call a full stack, racial equity focused, platform for building an equitable ecosystem in the 4th Industrial Revolution.
All right. You say full stack. Let's unstack those stacks. What's the full stack?
Borrowing from my techies for a second. About 3 years ago, we worked with the Federal Reserve System, which is, our central bank, our nation's central bank. And we worked with them to codify our framework for building inclusive innovation, entrepreneurship, and investment ecosystems. Now, if you think about the Boulder thesis, give you all a little history a little bit, founded by my friend Brad Feld, he talks about, how startup communities happen. How do they grow? And what you have to keep in mind that at some point, the large tech companies that a lot of us do business with and or work for were startups somewhere, and might have been really, relatively unknown to most people, because the startup community is pretty stealth unless you know about it or you hear about companies when they go public, right? Those companies may have been building and hiring folks, creating wealth for a decade before they go public. And so we codified our framework around early exposure. And so our company has programs around each of those. So the foundation is place. And when I say place, I mean building innovation and equity districts, tech hubs, co-working spaces. These are the large scale real estate plays. We opened our first co-working space back in 2013. And now we're partnering with several developers to build these equitable tech hubs inside of these massive, like 1, 2, 3, 4 million square feet developments. Mm-hmm. So that's place. Then you have early exposure. That's where our college programming comes in. We've helped over 1,000 Black, Brown, and Indigenous folks. Literally, I know folks say BIPOC, but when we look at the data, like it really is that. We've helped them get their first or next paid internship or full-time role. A lot of that work was centered around the partnership we had pre-pandemic with South by Southwest. We created HBCU at South by Southwest, and then we rebranded it to OHUB South by Southwest. The next level is our upskilling work. So we own a school. We call it Futures College, and we've helped 400 people learn how to be entry-level software developers, and they've gone on from there. We've ran a host of startup programs. We created our first pre-accelerator program 8 years ago when we first launched Opportunity Hub. Then we added an accelerator that, when appropriately funded, we make very, very early stage bets into companies, $25,000, $50,000, $100,000. We also have a talent agency, Dennis, as you know, that's growing like crazy. And then we have a venture fund that's called 100 Black Angels and Allies Fund. We've made about 9 investments to date. All of our investments are in Black people specifically. We don't really do the BIPOC narrative, brown. I get it. We're just unintentionally, specifically focused on investing in Black people. So that's the stat.
All right. Now that is a full stack, indeed. I'd like to introduce Preston James from DivInc. Preston, we're just doing introductions, so if you don't mind taking a minute to introduce yourself, let people know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, very quickly. Good morning, and congrats on BitCon. Kicking off strong. Rodney, good to see you as always, man. I see that beard getting a little bit longer each time, so good look for you, brother. Good luck.
I appreciate it.
Very quickly, Preston James. I am the CEO, co-founder of DivInc, and DivInc is a tech startup ecosystem builder based out of Austin, Texas. We essentially specifically focus on underrepresented founders, BIPOC founders, and really our focus has been, the reason why we started is because we wanted to remove the barriers associated with that the entrepreneurs, underrepresented entrepreneurs were facing in terms of building successful tech startup companies. And so our mission in life is building that programming and infrastructure to enable our founders to gain the experiences, to be able to navigate the early stage of the entrepreneurship journey so that they can build investable, fundable, high growth companies. And so we started back in 2016, and with that vision, we continue to build. Today, we operate. Our core of our programming is a tech startup accelerator program. It's 12 weeks, typically industry agnostic, early stage. So when we talk about early stage, Most of the companies are at MVP, pre-revenue or early revenue type companies. And then we work through them through the accelerator. After the accelerator program is completed, they become part of our portfolio. And we have a portfolio program which is focused on, hey, let's take them from where they are at the end of the accelerator and get them to that fundable stage, that pre-seed seed stage, right? And our experience has basically shown us thus far, if we can get folks to that seed stage, they pretty much understand the navigation of the journey. They have built a really strong network around them, and they know how to do that fairly well, right? And so now we partner with others to get them from seed to Series A, if that's where they need to go. And let me just clarify, we're not saying that everybody has to go that path, right? But, that's a journey in which allows us to all build high valuation businesses, right? Because at the end of the day, we do want to be able to address that racial wealth gap and that gender wealth gap, right? And so in order to do that, we have to build businesses that have valuations and that have the opportunities to experience exit or to grow to multi-million dollar businesses. So that's what we do, and we'll be introducing a microfund later on this year, probably in the November timeframe, so we can start making investments into the companies, not just in our portfolio, but some companies outside as well. So we're building that infrastructure and that programming to support those early stage founders, and continue to work and collaborate with folks like Rodney, like Zane Ventures, like 404 Accelerator based out of Atlanta, with Camelback Ventures and folks so it's all about us together and how we enable all of our entrepreneurs to experience the success that our peers have had over the many, many years. So getting back to that. So super excited to be here. And let's keep talking.
Yeah. And actually, you guys, I brought you here together for a specific reason. One, you have both the perspective of the entrepreneur community, the startup community, as well as individuals who are either in tech or aspiring to be in tech. And there's a diversity issue. It's well known, well documented, but doesn't seem to be getting any better. So I want to kind of approach this conversation from two fronts. One, from the perspective of companies and small businesses and startups who are looking to go that venture route as far as the funding is concerned, and current venture funding for Black founders is in the low single digits, and it's less than 1% for Black women, and for diversity just in tech in general. Those numbers are just as bad. But for the average worker, there are resources and tools that are out there to, kind of help, bridge that divide, or like we say, stop the divide. And I want to start with you, Rodney. So I guess let's talk about the racial equity in talent acquisition. And what are your thoughts there? What's the problem and how do we go about solving?
Sure. I kind of start with a story that's really contextual. So we started sponsoring college students from HBCUs, MSIs, and even PWIs to come down to Austin, Texas for South by Southwest. And what started happening, it was initially serendipitous when they were out sort of like a posse together, moving around with their t-shirts on. They kind of stood out because if you've ever been to that festival, especially the Innovation Festival, it's majority white. And they started getting requests for interviews and they started getting hired. And I said, wait, there's something to this. If we can create, this is the key word, density around early hiring or experienced hiring, whatever the stage of hiring is. 1 year, and then she started coming every year. I call her my mentor in talent. She calls me her mentor in tech. But Janice Bryant Howroyd was the first Black woman to build $1 billion company from the ground up. We affectionately call her JBH. It's called an Act One group. So JBH would fly down to South by Southwest, speak on our panel. She went to North Carolina A&T, so she was Aggie pride all day. And she said, Rodney, you're leaving millions, maybe even billions on the table. And I said, JBH, show us the way. And what she basically said is, you cannot let well-meaning companies off the hook by allowing them to access talent where essentially you're doing the sourcing, the recruiting, the pre-vetting, everything it takes to get that candidate ready. You cannot leave that 20 to 30% on the table. And so we set up a talent agency 2 years ago, and that's exactly what we've been doing. Now, I bring that up because the tech ecosystem, primarily venture-backed startups, a lot of people who've taken, a part of the Silicon Valley playbook, unfortunately, try to do everything lean, as quick as possible. And they sort of got in a habit of like hiring from their network. And we saw how that worked out for us, right? And what I realized is, when companies said they were looking for diverse talent, usually it's a well-meaning person sometimes. And there's even sometimes, Black people who are proximate to allies will kind of fall into that group think. And what I realized is folks will reach out to us and like, hey, do you have a job board? Can I post for free? Hey, you got a database at BitCon. Will you just send this out to your people for free? I'm sure, can I reach, you get this all the time.
I do get it a lot.
Yeah. And sometimes it's your skin folk because they send the skin folk says, oh, I'm part of this organization. I'm sure they would just do it for free. And what we haven't realized is that there's a unit economics of talent acquisition, even in the tech world, that has been ignored. So even early stage companies, Dennis, that say, hey, we just closed a seed round. We got to hire 15 people, but we didn't budget for staffing. Well, that's too bad. You don't get my services because you didn't budget. The accelerator should have taught you to add that 30% in your P&L. And then you would have the money there, whether you used it or not. And the reality of it is you have the money there because the moment you put out that rec for that position, the clock starts ticking. If it takes you 6 months to hire that person, literally the fee is sitting in the bank because you're not paying out the salary. And so I think a form of reciprocity for Black people in the tech ecosystem is when companies pay Black staffing companies to source and recruit that talent, or when they sponsor or associations and groups like yours in the same way and or with sponsorships, that's what we must do to increase the amount of people in the ecosystem.
Nice. I like that. We're going to have more conversations about that offline, I'm sure. So Preston, with respect to the startup community and diversity and the challenges there, I guess, and this is going back a few years, I mean, it was first documented that, the diversity numbers between venture capital, and what was actually reaching Black founders was abysmal. And I remember seeing this like at least 5-6 years ago. And seems like the same stories are recurring. Nothing has changed. People are getting more money. What's the problem? Why isn't there more capital flowing to these underrepresented founders?
Yeah, I'm going to say it like this. And, at the very fundamental level, man, I mean, we've got, historical racism and bias in the system. I mean, that's at the core of it. And we've got to break that. I mean, we have to, there's no way around that, right? Whether it's intentional or unintentional, it doesn't matter, right? We have to recognize the fact that, that's what we've got going on. The other fact of the matter is, and so we've got to break those barriers in terms of where that bias and where, in some cases, you have systematic approaches in terms of what looks good, right? Or what's a good company, or what is a good team. And we have to break those. We've got to break those systems down, right? The other fact of the matter is that based on the history of engagement, right? We have not been in the same circles of opportunity, right? And so our networks are vastly different. The resources that we've had access to have not been the same. They haven't been equitable in any way, shape, or form. And now we are, over the last, I would say, decade or so, right? Because Rodney and, Angela and some others were sort of like the, I would say early on, right, in the startup ecosystem. And we need to get more folks of color in the decision-making positions at venture capital, at angel investment, where the money is, regardless, right? Whether it's federal, state, local, venture, angel, doesn't matter. Corporate grant foundations, we need folks that look like us in those decision-making positions. Likewise, we need those folks because their networks are going to be more diverse than the traditional white male leadership, right? And as a result of those networks, then we will be able to find those opportunities or have networks into those opportunities. And so traditionally, the venture capital and angel investment world have been limited in their scope in terms of where those opportunities for investment. So they've been investing essentially in about 30% of the population, right? And innovation, as we know, comes from anywhere, right? And so how do you get, number one, how do you get them to invest in a greater portion of our population where innovation exists? And likewise, how do we create more opportunities for folks of color and women, right? Women of color. How do we create those opportunities for them to get access to that venture capital and those investment dollars and creating more opportunities? And then I think the third piece is the system of investment has been skewed, right? Venture capital. But what about those who can invest, who don't have $1 million, who don't have, why can't an individual who has, 25,000 be able to make investments into companies, right? And those laws have changed and opened up. And then you see crowdfunding and you see other opportunities coming about where we can create more investment opportunities for our companies. So all those factors, come to bear, right? And then now, how do we also in our communities create the mindset of entrepreneurship, right? And then so there's a mindset shift in, how we talk to each other about, opportunities of entrepreneurship, tech entrepreneurship in particular, and how do you do it? Right, getting exposure and experience to it. How do we bring that into our daily lives so that we're creating a mindset shift in our homes and in our schools with our kids so that we're creating this generational path, right, to what entrepreneurship and how to be successful with it. So there's a lot of things that, I would say those 3-4 major things that need to continue to happen in order to create greater opportunities and shift those numbers where it's not just 1% Black getting VC capital, but it's getting more into the 13% or 12, 13%, right? That's sort of aligned to our demographic population. And the same thing with the brown population as well, and women. It should be shifting, right? And we've got to create those opportunities across all those spectrums to be able to do that.
Yeah. And I really respect the, work of people like Arlen Hamilton, who spoke yesterday, Backstage Capital, who created her own fund specifically to, address some of these systemic issues. And, I hear you. We need to have more diversity, at the decision-making level in these VC firms. But even when they have, Black partners or, folks who are seeking out talent, it doesn't seem to really move the needle. I really like the idea of, equity crowdfunding, the Jobs Act, eliminated a lot of the barriers for people to invest as individuals. They don't necessarily have to be accredited investors now, so you don't have to have, a couple of $100,000 in the bank and all of that. You can, invest in companies for equity with very little capital, which is nice. I think we need to start doing more of that and having more syndication around how we collectively, utilize our resources, even if they're, small, to make a big impact. So I'm all for those types of initiatives. But it's still a problem and it still persists. I don't know if there's any, easy way to fix it, but I do like the thought process. And I think a lot of it comes down to education and communication and branding. Basically, we need to, teach folks that these are options. These are things that they should be aware of. Make sure that the community knows to educate their children about what it is that they could do when they get to the point where they're ready to make career decisions. So I don't know. I thought there was a question there, but it doesn't sound like it. Let me get back to my questions. Get on my soapbox. All right. So with respect to the challenges that you guys see on a daily basis, is there any low-hanging fruit? Anything that can be done like quickly, tangibly to, affect change? Anything that you see that can be done like in the next, 6 months to a year per se?
Yeah, I mean, structurally, things take a while, but not if folks are on board. I'm dropping one link. So we created a Black Technology Ecosystem Investment Certificate Program at UNC Chapel Hill, Keenan Flagler, in collaboration with Duke and Stanford. I'm a visiting professor there this year. And we've got about 40 Black people and a few allies. Mostly the Black folks are from the Links Incorporated. So while you have some folks in the ecosystem who are focusing on diversifying, dominant VC, dominant investment platforms, I'm like, I got to get more Black people into the asset class, or we're only creating outlier wealth. Nothing wrong with that. It works for me personally, but we've got to have hundreds of thousands of people, if not even millions of Black people participating to even talk about narrowing the racial wealth gap. So when I hear conversations like, hey, I launched one VC fund, or I've got I want to do my startup become successful because I want to close the racial wealth gap. We're doing a disservice to folks really understanding that's false signaling, because the racial wealth gap is so huge and it's getting worse. Case in point, last year when all new money, I call it the Black Lives Matter money, was going into Black venture funds and Black founders, it was like a waterfall event that had never happened. More capital went into our funds than ever before last year. Yet when they counted all the money up at the end of the year, dominant capital increased, and so we still got less. We got actually less percentage-wise last year than years before. And so, like, when you want to talk about what can we do in the next 6 to 12 months? Like if we can get coalitions of Black people on board to invest in the asset class, whether it be through private deals, syndicates for venture funds, or equity crowdfunding. So the links, you know, the Boule, the D9, associations like you all, right? NESB, groups that have communities of people that can be taught, and we can literally flood, and we have to be intentional on partnering with the accelerators and the programs where Black founders are. We should be funding a seed round of a Black high growth startup every week. Then it ought to get to the point that we're doing it every day. Like literally every day, a Black founder should be closing a seed round in this country until it's like not even news anymore, right? That's number one. The second thing, structurally on the talent side, is that if you are Black in tech at a dominant company, one, think about going to work for a high growth Black owned company where you can get more equity because it's an earlier stage company. Look at earlier stage companies as a path to your own respective wealth creation. I'll give you a quick example. You could have went to Microsoft, you could have went to GitHub. And I actually know people that I consulted on which route to go. The people who went to GitHub are now millionaires because Microsoft bought them. Same work, same role, but somebody went to GitHub versus going to Microsoft. That's a plug, y'all, to look at going to these earlier stage companies and increasing your risk profile a little bit. The final thing is, if you work at these dominant companies, when they come to you asking you, how can we get more Black and brown folks in the house? Basically tell them you need to go hire Black and brown agencies. You need to be prepared to make the investment. And I'll close with this. If your diversity, equity, and inclusion is not solutions oriented, we call that DEIS, DEIS, DEIS. Solutions denotes action. Action requires funding. If it's not funded, it's performative. Don't do performative DE&I. Always make sure there is a budget, not a false negative budget, but a budget tied to your work in the ecosystem at all levels.
I love that. And I can attest that if you get with a company that's, a pre-public company or pre-acquisition company, those stock options do work, y'all. It's a real thing. I'll pivot back to Preston really quick. So with respect to allies, and I know that both of you work with South by Southwest in some capacity, who are some of the allies that you have, from a corporate or individual standpoint? And what role do they play in, in solving this diversity pipeline problem?
Okay, I didn't catch the last part in terms of the pipeline problem.
Well, yeah, and diversity for businesses, diversity for talent. What role do allies play?
Yeah, I think for those opportunities, Rodney hit it on. I mean, the program that he launched at South by, I think, was sort of right on target to flood South by with, hundreds of college students. For that age group, that's exposure, right? That's exposure, that's building a network, that's, being able to see things that they normally might not even see in their everyday lives. And it's the vision of what's possible, right? Not just, them, but this is what's possible for me, right? To be able to meet the Rodney Sampsons and the John Henrys and the Preston Jameses, right? Of, hey, this is what they're doing. This is what's possible. We have to be in these spaces, right? We have to be there because it creates that vision. It creates a pathway for that future. And in terms of, the pipeline build, and I want to kind of add on to, the answer, and I'm kind of stuck on that, what Rodney mentioned, the question we had asked before. And I want to share this, right? Because this is really important. Right now, I don't know what the final number is, but suffice it to say, we had about 2.63 million Black-owned businesses in the United States, right? And roughly 96 to 97% of those businesses were being operated as single proprietorships, right? Meaning that they did not have employees. They were not employers, right? Meanwhile, our peers, right, they have over 20% of their businesses that are employer-based. Now, if we were able to achieve parity at that 20% level, the amount of jobs, the amount of revenue, and the valuations of our businesses would be substantially higher. And there will be some sort of dent in that racial wealth gap. It may not close all the way, but it will be a significant gap.
We'll take it.
So Rodney's talking about hundreds of thousands and millions, but we already have millions of businesses already out there. So how do we take some of those and say, hey, let's scale and grow those? And all we're talking about is roughly about 5 employees per company. Roughly 5 employees per company. So in my mind, and I know this math sounds crazy, but we're talking about 2 out of 10 Black-owned companies having 5 employees. And it sounds simple, right? Like we should be able to do that, right? We should be able to do that. And I don't think it's a technical problem 100%, right? I think you mentioned the education, the exposure, the networks, the know-how, and in some cases, the financial capital as well, right? So how do we do that collectively together? And I think, folks like myself, Rodney, and so many others are trying to hit that and try to break that so that for, 2 or 3 out of 10, in my mind, I'm like 7 out of 10 companies coming out of DivInc will be able to get to that point, right? But that's 10, 20, 40 at a time, right? We gotta get to that high volume. And so this whole new generation of folks, of entrepreneurs, have got to be thinking in that growth mindset of, I'm going to build a company, but it's not just me, right? I'm going to be an employer. I'm going to be hiring 5, 10, 20, 50 people in my organization, right? How do I do that, right? And that, obviously that is hard to do. It is very difficult to do, but it has been done. It's been proven, and there's plenty of us who know how to do it. And we've got to pour that into our communities so that folks can build these, in my mind, and I want to share this as well, the valuation of your company. If you build a 5-person company that's generating over $1 million, your company obviously has some value. That value, your business is an asset. That asset is part of your net worth, right? And so if I'm able to put $3 million on my asset table, my personal asset table, my net worth just has gone up from like nothing to 3 million because I have this 5-person business generating, $600 million, right? That's the mindset that we get to. That's how we can do more of that. So we got 3 million businesses out there already, right? We're trying to build some more, right? And we've got to get there. We've got to get there.
Yeah, drop the gems.
I want to respond on that just really quickly.
I got Rodney stirred up.
Yeah, I like the thinking, and Preston is definitely right. We do want to put my Brookings hat on for a minute. We want to adjust for the number of Black businesses that shutter during COVID, but that offers an opportunity. I think there actually a strategy is there needs to be kind of a national consolidation, right? Let's say it's 2.3 businesses and there are 20,000 PR firms, right? Half of y'all need to come together. Right then we just made a 2-person, 3-person, 4-person, 5-person firm where y'all all get to, if 5 PR firms, if you're doing 150, they doing 200, they doing 300, you doing 60. When y'all come together, y'all together can claim one asset that has that $1 million valuation or that 3x, once you look at if somebody came and bought it today. So I think there needs to be egos down, consolidation up, number one. The second thing is these businesses don't require venture capital.
That's right.
Now, that's not to say that Black people shouldn't, advance our asset class to say, forget the rules of VC. Let's invest in our own businesses regardless, because we don't have to have a unicorn every time. And this requires us to have different limited partners who are not demanding the same returns that traditional venture are giving us. Maybe we have more investor-friendly, founder-friendly terms when it's crowdfunding, when it's an association. But this is where Black people in tech can help, is in procurement, making sure that your companies are hiring Black suppliers. If you work at a tech company and that tech company needs everything from legal, outsourced accounting, janitorial services, real estate brokerage, software consultant, hire Black firms, staffing agencies. And when that happens, and that's why we teach diversity, equity, inclusion solutions beyond just HR and corporate social responsibility. You got to teach it in terms of Black people on boards, more Black people at a company, more Black people getting hired through procurement, through product development, through go-to-market, investment, and impact. And so if you're working at these companies and you're the diversity champion, driving contracts to Black-owned businesses is key. And I got really excited because Preston is absolutely right. A lot of people get crippled by not starting a company because they look at the venture capital numbers. You don't require venture capital to start a company. I actually encourage people, you really should your first business should be a business that you should start that you can do with what you have. Because if your business depends on mostly white allies being more equitable, why would you subject your life and your career trajectory to someone else's long game journey?
Facts.
Why would you? And I know some of us, we like that type of pain, right? But we're used to that pain and we're able to navigate it. And so until you learn that science, I believe people should build what they can sell. If you can build it and sell it, get to $1 million in revenue doing that. And then when you come back with your second business says, I want to raise venture capital. You know who did that? Savitra Wilson. Savitra Wilson had a multi-million-dollar consulting shop in New Orleans, Louisiana, before she started Resilient. And now, as a Black woman founder in Louisiana, in New Orleans, she's raised more venture capital as any woman in the state. But she cut her teeth building a multi-million-dollar consulting company, right? So there's levels to this, but there's a journey. We got to long game it, and we got to definitely focus on building new financial models and support infrastructure for our existing businesses that are generating revenue. That's
I appreciate that, Preston. We're over time, but I'll let you go if you can, answer in a minute.
No, I was just going to say, to Rodney's point, I mean, none of us do this on our own. None of us do this on our own. So, tap into the networks. We're primarily in Texas. Rodney's all over, but he's really firm up in Atlanta. There are different networks that you can tap into to learn, right? The things that we were talking about and how to build this, right? But it's not a only me type of thing, right? You got to build a strong support around you in terms of advisors and subject matter experts, people who've been there and done that. So don't be afraid to do that in order to go ahead and achieve what, your vision of what you want to build. All right, so come on in, reach out to folks and seek that mentorship and advisory and subject matter expertise from our folks who've sort of been there or who are focused on, developing, entrepreneurs and helping people in that way. So just come on in and be part of that network.
All right. Well, gentlemen, this was great. I'm sure we could talk for another 2 or 3 hours, easy. But hopefully we'll be able to get you back for another Blacks in Technology event, and we can dive a little bit deeper into some of these topics and, hopefully make something happen. I mean, you guys are really affecting change. You're not talking it, you're doing it. I appreciate you both, and I look forward to, developing our relationship further. So thank you, gentlemen. For everybody who's participating, we're going to take a little bit of time to do some networking. I carved out a little bit of networking time. So in the speed networking section in the left-hand nav of Hopin, you can meet some other folks who are in attendance. Build that network. You never know who you'll find. It's kind of cool because it randomly selects people to pair together. So, find out who's out there and, connect, build some relationships. All right, y'all. We'll see you back in about 20 minutes here on the main stage with Sherelle Dorsey, who's going to, talk numbers, bring the facts, and hold some folks accountable who pledged a lot of money. Haven't released it. I'm looking forward to that conversation. All right, now, take care.
Take care. Thanks, Dennis. Good to see you, Rodney.
Good to see you, Preston.
Yeah.